in a way you can't understand. Maybe you never will.
I don't think I can forgive you for this, but I would like to try.
Welcome, everyone, to tonight's discussion and after show for The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 6, the penultimate episode titled The Price. An episode that reminded me of the dynamic that I've missed so far this season, the void that has not been filled, and that is the Joel void and the relationship between Joel and Ellie. What a beautiful episode of generational trauma, breaking the cycle, displaying what those would do in order to save their loved ones. So much goodness going on, lies, promises being broken, so much that I really enjoy. But again, this is, if I were to have an issue, we'll talk about, I do question the placement of this episode. And I also question the big thing, which is, does this show miss Joel? Is the Joel absence been a big, I don't say distraction, but has it been a void that, like I said, hasn't been filled for me? But do you all feel the same? Let me know in the comments below. So with all that being said, man, let's set up this breakdown and get into it. So many great moments, but this scene here, this cold open, which correct me if I'm wrong, for the video game fans out there, I'm pretty confident that this is not in the game. I think this is a show thing. They've had a lot of different cold openings to establish the tone and the mood of that particular episode, and this did an excellent job of doing so. This scene said so much about so much of this show, but also these characters, and specifically Joel. This did so much for me, y'all, and explaining where he comes from. You know, this flashback sequence takes place in Austin, Texas. It's 1983. This is Joel. There was a situation with his younger brother, Tommy, that is established early on. Tommy was involved in buying some drugs. He got caught. There was a fight that ensued, and we find out his father here, who I can't think of the actor's name right now. Let me know in the comments. I know he's in the most recent season of Daredevil. He was in Hawkeye, and I know he was fantastic in Better Call Saul. He's a great actor, and he shows us in this scene here. But he's a police. He knows what went down. You know, Joel is trying to protect his younger brother. And again, the importance of this and just knowing what this meant for Joel, it establishes so much. That number one, he's willing to lie for those he loves, right? We see that he's willing to lie for Tommy. He wasn't the one that bought the drugs. He was the one that kind of saved his younger brother. He was willing to bite the bullet for his brother by, we find out his dad is abusive. He was willing to take the beating for his brother because he knew his dad was going to, lay down the law in a sense of, beating his son for his wrongdoing. So we find out about that with Joel very early on, that since a young age, I don't want to say it's a character flaw, but it is a flaw nonetheless. And that's this kind of savior complex that he's always wanted to save people since a young age. And he wanted to save his brother. And obviously we see that many years later, he wanted to save Ellie, and we saw what that cost him. So that establishes that early on. We also find out again that his dad is abusive, and Joel doesn't want to be his dad. We see that we didn't spend a ton of time with Joel and Sarah, but we understood that they had a really good father and daughter relationship. And obviously her loss meant the world to him and really messed him up for many, many years until he came across Ellie, obviously. So we understand that Joel does not want to be his father. So he's breaking that cycle of trauma, breaking that cycle of abuse and parenting skills. He wants to come at it in a different way. But there's also another important thing that we kind of get from this scene, and that is from the father. Joel, I think his name was Joel Miller. He might be Joel might be a junior, or might have another first name. But anyway, we find out that this sense of being a big brother and willing to sacrifice himself for his younger brother, Tommy, it almost was an eye-opener for his dad. His dad tells him the story about how his grandfather hit him one time, that he hit him so hard he broke his jaw. And he was so embarrassed, and everyone in the neighborhood knew it. And, Joel says, and you know how it feels to get abused, but yet you do it. And he explains, I hit you all, but it's not to the level, it's not to the extent, it's not to the, the severity of what my dad did. But it's in this moment that the father learned from the son. And that moment is, if you ever have your own, maybe you could do better. Hopefully you will do better.
When it's your turn, I hope you do a little better than me.
We'll obviously talk about that later, but think about that cycle. what his dad said to Joel and what Joel says to Ellie later. If you ever have your own kids, maybe you'll understand where I'm coming from. So this, the last 2 or 3 weeks, maybe 2 weeks more in particular, at least from my perspective, and I've seen it online too, and some of you all have mentioned in the comments, there's been a disconnect. Not from a performance standpoint, not from, the visual effects are always good. The suspense when it hits always works. The practical effects always works. All that stuff hits. But, I think these last 3 episodes, 2.5 maybe, has shown what happens when the writing isn't that clean or isn't that well thought out. This episode and episode 2, and there's been other moments in the season, but this episode and episode 2 stand out to me that these people know how to write. These people know how to direct. They know how to tell good stories. So it kind of frustrates you. It frustrates me. At least I'll speak for myself that, we could have had these levels of moments, this level of gravity, of gravitas, and levels of conversation. But it seems like for whatever reason, they didn't step up to the plate. But again, we're not talking about the past. We're talking about the present and appreciating the present and appreciating these scenes. This is a big scene. This is a well-written scene, well-acted scene. And again, to me, bring up, one of my followers on the channel, but someone came into the after show or the watch party and left a comment. And again, not poking fun at them or calling them out, but someone came in the live chat and said, what's the purpose of this episode? And, they could have been literally just like, I'm not coming in a malicious way, that could have been the purpose, but it came off the rail red. It was just like, this episode is boring. It's pointless, this, that, and the third. And again, to each their own, but this scene and the things we see later on in this episode, to me, prove the purpose of this episode. And that is breaking the cycle of trauma, watching someone like Joel, what he's willing to do, lie, deceive in some sense to protect the ones he loves. And that's reciprocated with Ellie. We see what it meant for her to experience having a father figure like Joel, having that separation, that tension, feeling like she was lied on or lied upon, deceived, and something was taken away from her, purpose. So this was just a fantastic episode in so many different ways. But again, the table setter, the appetizer, if you will, this cold open really set the stage for what I consider to be the second best episode of the season so far, behind episode 2. And, in some ways, taking out the spectacle and the shock value of episode 2, this might even be a better written episode because it really does hit on those marks of the emotional depth and the emotional weight from these characters. So kudos. Neil, who directed this, and I think he wrote this episode, great opening. But as we move past the opening scene, and again, we're establishing this episode that's going to be mainly flashbacks, and that's what it mostly was, besides the last 10, 15 seconds of the episode. But we flash forward to the cold open from 83. We're now in 2024, I think, because this is 5 years. This is showing us a couple months removed from season 1. Joel and Ellie are new to Jackson, and they're still getting a feel for who these people are, what these relationships are, what have you. And we see Seth. We find something out about Seth in this scene. He has grandkids. He used to be a police in Milwaukee PD, and now he's kind of searching for a new purpose, with this whole situation with Apocalypse and being a bartender and not being the guy he used to be. I think we could all relate to that. When time passes, we change as people, what have you. But again, we see the father figure. We see Joel in this fatherly position that he's in, and how he just always wants to take care of his daughter, which is Ellie, right? And I love these opening moments and this whole ritual that he has. And it's just like, no matter what, he always wants to celebrate the birthday, right? This is her 15th birthday. And this is a side conversation, much longer conversation. And to each your own, but I hear people complain about Pedro. Pedro, what's the big deal about Pedro? He's in everything. What's up with this guy? I think this episode proved to me, or not to me, but proved to the audience that might question him as an actor and why he is in so many different projects and why these directors and writer want him to be a part of his projects. He's a great actor. He is a great actor, man. Like, this whole episode, to me, I felt that weight. I felt that pain. I felt the love. I felt the regrets, all in his eyes, all his emotions. And I felt the way that he is trying to right his wrongs in a sense of, losing Sarah, not protecting Sarah. Again, going back to that opening scene, he has a savior complex, and losing Sarah was the most difficult thing he's ever experienced in his life. And he failed his daughter in his eyes. So now he has a second chance with this, Ellie being a new daughter in a way to do right and protect her by any means necessary, even if it means a cure for saving the world. I think, again, goes back to the performance. To have all those different ranges of emotions, you need an actor that can pull that off. And I know, in my opinion, Pedro has proven that. And again, try to be positive about this season, even though I've been pretty disappointed. This episode was just more and more proof that this show has missed his presence in a major way on a lot of different levels. Man, this is a big theme that this episode kind of touches on, and something that I think we touched on a little bit earlier in the season, and this idea that Ellie has some dark thoughts at times and has some moments of being unsure about herself and feeling like she doesn't have a purpose in life. We find out on her 15th birthday that she was out with Tommy, and she burned her hand on a hot pot, I believe is what she burned her arm on. And it seemed like it was done purposefully, as kind of confirmed by Joel a little bit later in the episode. He says he understands why she did that, kind of, having this moment of filling the void of depression, of feeling like you don't have anything to live for. And, when you think about the world that these characters are in, it's not a far stretch to imagine that people at a young age and people that grew up in the apocalypse, like Ellie, has these moments of like, what are we even fighting for? What are we waking up for every day? Right. So this is interesting that she does purposefully hurt herself to maybe have this moment of like what it feels to have pain, to experience loneliness and depression. And again, the big void in her life was like, do I have a purpose in this world? And again, it puts more context to why she was so upset with Joel in the decision that he made in Salt Lake to take that decision from her. Like, I've missed their dynamic, man. It's been a severely missed, and we see even moments like this with him giving her the cake, which was spelled Eli and not Ellie from Seth, and they laugh it off. He's gonna get her a plate, but she's just digging in there, that childlike Ellie that we all come to love. And shout out to Bella Ramsey, by the way. Obviously they shot this during the time that she was at an older age, and she's able to tap back into that younger version of Ellie, which I guess I shouldn't say tap back into it, because she's been kind of playing this younger version of herself for most of the season, besides a couple darker moments like we saw in episode 5. But again, man, the dynamic between these two this episode really reminded me of what was so compelling about season 1 was just that father and daughter, that found family story that I'm a sucker for. I always love a found family type of a narrative. And I love how this episode kind of played on that, right? The kind of build up to just showing the good days, the early days, when everything was, even in this shitty dark world they live in, that they can have these quieter moments, these heartfelt moments, and create these memories that can last a lifetime. What a sweet moment between these two when he's playing the guitar, singing the song at the request of the birthday girl, Ellie. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm gonna have to go back and watch episode 5, but I think we see Ellie earlier in that episode when she's on stage and she's beginning to play the guitar. She starts to say a lyric, and I think she says, "I don't want to let you down," or something like that. And if I am wrong, let me know, but I'm pretty sure what she says is the same lyrics that he's saying in the scene, and we hear the full song.
Days of you and me.
Well, that didn't suck.
Again, it just shows the vulnerability of Joel, this tough guy, macho man, this smuggler. He'll kill you if he has to. Transferring that same kind of energy. We know Ellie is a no-nonsensical, quick on her feet, no-nonsense type of person, but even her appreciating this moment of Joel singing to her. And again, it just reminds us of the love they shared We went from her 15th birthday to now her 16th birthday. They are out in the woods. Joel found this special spot on patrol. The father-daughter relationship is still strong. It's going on good. Everything's going good. We got to remember Sarah. I think she was a year younger than Ellie, than when Joel met Ellie, or maybe like a year older, but she wasn't, she unfortunately didn't make it to be, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. She died, unfortunately, at a young age. What I'm getting at is this is brand new territory for Joel to have a 16-year-old to take care of. And yeah, those tough kind of, I don't have any kids besides my dog here, but obviously it's a whole new different level when you're taking care of a human being. But, it's a whole new ball game when you have a 16-year-old that you're trying to still have those boundaries of like, I'm your dad, but I can be your friend and your protector. And there's just certain conversations that I would imagine for a mom or a dad can be uncomfortable, but particularly a dad. And also with their situations, he's not obviously he's not her biological father. So I know, again, I've mentioned it 1,000 times already throughout these breakdowns. I haven't played part 2, but I knew certain elements of part 2 from the video game. This was another moment that I did know about, that I've seen clips online from the cutscenes, and this moment being, again, a reminder of how much joy it brings Joel to make Ellie happy. Meant so much to him, and these little moments of showing her the dinosaur and and the child wonder of seeing a dinosaur again. She's 16, but she's obviously missed out on so much childlike. And again, that's why Joel, another thing to think about throughout this episode, and think about Joel, him being kind of overprotective in a way. She never experienced her childhood growing up in this apocalyptic world. Little moments of wonder and fantasy of seeing a dinosaur and being in this museum. I'm sure this is her first time experiencing any of this, at least in this context, and not having to worry about death around the corner. Again, putting that aside and just appreciating these kind of small moments in life, and it brought him so much joy. It brought him so much joy, man. He brings her into the museum, and he's already been there. He's fixed up the globe so she can see the space, the orbit in space, and the different planets. And then he takes her to the rocket ship. Just thinking about the context of this episode, of the first scene of Joel and his dad, and his dad saying, "I hope you get to experience what it feels like to be a parent," and to have this moment, to have Ellie, have this moment of wonder going to space, and the child's imagination of her imagining them in space with the benefit of having the tape and the space launch and the countdown and shaking the rocket ship and all that. It's moments like this, man, that just puts so much into context and puts so much into the why. But I gotta be that guy that brings up, that has been my biggest issue with this season so far. It's just like, we see this in this episode, how much Joel loved Ellie, how much Ellie loved Joel, how much the lie meant to her, and how it kind of destroyed the relationship and whatnot. But there was still always love between those two. But all this stuff, the build that we're getting from Joel, and the importance of Joel, and why she's going after Abby, this episode reminded us that. But episodes 5 and 4 felt like she forgot that. She forgot the purpose. She forgot the relationship that she had with Joel. That was just so, try not to, go back to the past, but that was my biggest issues with those episodes. It's just like, she seems to have forgotten what she's in Seattle for. It was just, as you all, if you've seen my breakdowns, I made it pretty clear. I was pretty upset with how they were handling the character, and the lack of the priority seeming to be kind of subbed out for, a love story that I've enjoyed, but it's just like, that shouldn't be the priority. But either way, not to bring up, old wounds, but again, look at that face. Look at this face on Joel. Let me remove myself and put Joel on the screen. Look at that. This is what it's all for. This is what I would imagine that he's saying in his head. This happiness, this joy that she's experiencing right now, I'd imagine he wish he can just freeze time and just be there with Ellie. But unfortunately, that's not how the world works, and that's not how life works. We fast forward to a year later, 15, 16. She's now 17. And look, I'll just speak for myself, and I'm sure you all can relate to this. Those adults that are watching this, there becomes a point right around this time, 16, 17, and for sure 18, but that 16, 17, even 14, it's always different from everyone. But I remember for me, when I was around 15, 16, 17, there's that tug and pull. There's that dynamic between, I didn't grow up with a dad. I had my mom who did a wonderful job. Her and my grandmother raised me. But there becomes a time where, you feeling yourself. You might have got a car. You might, got some friends or a person you have interest in romantically. You might be on the baseball, basketball, football. What I'm getting at, you're feeling yourself, right? And you kind of feel like adulthood is right around the corner. And the childlike wonder and curiosity and innocence is kind of being put on the back burner. And again, you're now entering adulthood. But then from a parent perspective, again, I'm not a parent, but I could just imagine they're still your child. They still see that little, in Joel's case, he still sees that little 14-year-old girl. He doesn't see the adult that she's becoming. Again, is that conflict between a parent and a child. And we spent the first two flashbacks, 15, 20 minutes of the episode, showing the care, the love, the relationship that they've had. It's now going downhill. Ellie's not a little girl anymore, Joel. At least she doesn't think she is. Well, she isn't. She's 17. She's still a kid, but, she's not a 14-year-old. Great line by Joel in this scene. She's just doing all the adult stuff in this scene, smoking, drinking, and having sex. The last part, she's not having sex, but she was, fooling around. I can't remember the character's name. Let me know in the comments. But this is the character, the girl that she's in the scene with here. She was mentioned in episode 1 when Dina and Ellie were on their horse. They were going to the do patrol. It was before they found that stalker. Dina had said something. The girl that we see in the scene was doing patrol with them. And Dina had said something of the lines of like, she left you or something. She left a scar on you. Nonetheless, she was referring to the tattoo. She was Ellie's first quote unquote girlfriend. And that was the girl. So it puts even more context in that moment. But again, the importance of the butterfly, or to say the moth and the tattoo, and just the idea going back to what Ellie did earlier in the episode with burning her arm and now putting this tattoo on her arm. And we have the scene with Joel and Gail talking about the meaning behind the moth of like representing death. And again, it speaks to like Ellie being in this mindset of like dark, depressing thoughts, and also not feeling like she has a purpose in her life. So I love all this stuff here. And there's a tension again. The love, the happy, the dinosaur, the guitar gift, the going off to space gift. And now those days, again, when you get older, you start to miss those days because she's no longer, like I said, a kid. She's no longer 14, 15 years old, 16 years old, Joel. She's, in her mind, she's becoming an adult. So there's friction there. There's tension there. But even in the midst of all this kind of argument, even with this argument, he still is trying to understand her. Right? Oh, got a tattoo. Oh, it doesn't look that bad compared to my drawing. So again, he's still, what I got from that is like, what I'm getting at is he's still trying to be on her side. He's not trying to be closed off. He's not trying to create this hard line in the sand that I'm the dad, you're the kid, you listen to me. He's trying to compromise, right? Again, this is brand new territory from man Joel. He's never had to take care of, had to, care for and watch over a 17-year-old. This is all new to him. After this fight, she looks in the garage. She wants to move in the garage. She's trying to take her bed out to the garage and stay there. And Joel, again, being, the good guy, the good dad, the cool dad, the compromising dad, is like, give me a couple days. I'll clean up for you. Maybe you do need some space. You're getting a little bit older, and metaphorically and literally that space is being built between them is, they're growing further and further apart, unfortunately, which kind of leads to, Ellie being a little bit older. I think there's a much larger conversation to be had about, again, just thinking about when I was younger, there comes a time where I don't say idolize, but you put your parents on a certain pedestal. You put your parents in a certain frame of mind. But as you get older, you experience things in life. You you start to see your parents as not just your parents, but as people, right? Because they were a person before they were, a parent or whatnot. And you start to see your parents as human beings, right? And you start to see some of the flaws in your hero and your parent, your mom, your dad, or whoever raised you. And you start to question some of their things and their personality and be like, that ain't cool, mom or dad. But again, you start to see their flaws at a certain point, at a certain age, and you start to question things. But, I say all that to say Ellie's starting to do that same thing, right? For those adolescence years, those teenage years, she always knew in the back of her head that whole Salt Lake City thing was a little bit off. Something was off about that story. You see Ellie in her room practicing the speech that she's going to say. She has on paper, like she's questioning, like, that story you gave doesn't really add up. It doesn't really make sense. I was questioning myself, and I'm like, I wonder what sparked Ellie to come to this point where she wants to question what happened. And I think it just boils down to, like I said, I think I'll just speak for myself, but I feel like it's a universal thing that once you hit a certain age, like sometimes it could be younger, sometimes it could be older, but I think you hit a certain point where you start to question your parents and you start to, like I said, look at them as people. Think, like I said, when you experience life more, Ellie in this case, 19 years old, see people for who they are. And you start to see personality flaws. You start to see ticks. You start to notice, oh, my mom's lying right now. My dad's lying right now because they look down when they talk. They try to change the subject when they talk. Or, they do certain things that, in this case, he does something that triggers Ellie. So when he lied, we'll talk about that later. So if you can't tell, this is a deep episode. Like I'm coming off the episode just giving you all what I saw initially, but I'm pretty sure if I watch this episode again, I can dig out more things that really hits home and really speaks to a deeper level. But so it is now Ellie's 19th birthday. Again, birthday 15, cake, the guitar. Next birthday, we got the going off to space and creating that really nice moment. And, the next birthday, a little bit of some tension there between daughter and father. And now fast forward to her being 19. He kept his promise that when she got a bit older, he would take her on patrol, and he kept his promise. And we see them on patrol. And again, even though they have a little bit of tension, they're still on good terms, nothing too crazy. But in the back of Ellie's mind, she still has that question, Salt Lake City. And we see that weighing on her in this particular flashback, that there's just something that's just not right. But in this moment, they get a call that Eugene and someone else has come under attack. There's something that went wrong on one of the patrols. Joel, being the protective father, Ellie, I need you to go back to Jackson. And she tells him, no, I'm not your child. I'm your partner. Sure, if circumstances were different, Joel might have been more combative, but they don't know how much time they have. They have to save people. This isn't the time or place to argue. Good callback, something that was mentioned very early on in season 2, episode 1. We meet Gail, and we have the scene between Gail and Joel, and she mentions that she has a hatred for Joel for what he did to Eugene, and we find out why. Eugene has been bitten, and we understand the levity, the gravity, the seriousness of the situation. Now, I don't remember in the canon of the show and or the game, but when someone's bitten, I don't know the sense of time of when you're bitten and how fast you can turn into an infected. Nonetheless, regardless, you're gonna die. There's no cure, so he's gonna die eventually, whether it's an hour or whether it's 10 minutes. My position, and as cruel as it might sound, and obviously this isn't me, the Elliot that you see on your screen talking. This is me putting myself in Joel's shoes in the context of the situation. You can't risk what Joe, or I should say what Eugene is requesting, which he kindly asks Joel if he would allow him to take him back to Jackson to say goodbye to his wife, but also, as we find out later in the scene, for he can hear the words from her to say goodbye to him. I understand the sentiment. I understand the request, the importance of the request, but there are rules in place for a reason. Now you might say to yourself, well, Elliot, Joel kind of made he made the ultimate sacrifice. He took Ellie back for he can talk, he can feed his selfish reasons to keeping her from, being killed and having the cure. So you would think there's a level of sympathy. There's a level of understanding how much it would mean to someone, especially Joel losing Sarah. He was unfortunately, she died in his arms, but he was able to be with her right in those final moments. So you would think there's a level of sympathy, and I get that. But again, I'm thinking about the beginning of this episode and Joel's purpose for the rest of his life, and that is to protect Ellie. And putting someone that's infected, granted, Ellie, if she gets bit, she's immune. But again, putting that aside, immune or not immune, you're still compromising not only the person you love and Ellie, but also going back to taking this infected person back to Jackson. That compromises the safety of Tommy, Marie, their kids, obviously the relationships Joel has built over the last 5 years. So again, it's asking a lot for someone to potentially compromise the people he loves. Again, Ellie, Tommy, Maria, so on and so forth. So I understand Joel's decision. We all know that if Ellie wasn't there, he would have popped him as soon as he saw he was bit. That's just the reality of the situation. Ellie, she wants to honor the request, allow him to see Gail one last time and to have that moment of clarity, have that moment of closure. And again, you got to remember, in Ellie's mind, it's almost like all this is like a double meaning for Ellie and Joel. And you also have to remember there's a sense of, he lied to me. They're not on the best terms right now. So it's just like, come on, Joel. Like, she's saying without saying it. Like, don't screw up someone's opportunity to having some type of, a final goodbye, or taking a decision away from someone like you took my decision away to giving my life. Well, she didn't know she was going to die, but giving myself to the, to the doctors to make the cure. So we got to remember that in this scene, where Joel's coming from, but where also Ellie's coming from, and also where Eugene's coming from, right? He wants to say goodbye to the love of his life. And it's a tough and caught between a rock and a hard place. But again, from my position, I would love to know what you all would do, obviously, in the context of the show. This isn't, whatever your response is, doesn't make you a good person or a bad person. We're talking about in the show. If you were Joel, what would you do? But also, what would you do if you were Ellie? Would you be in Ellie's position? Would you want to honor his request? And hell, throw this in the mix. What would you do if you were Eugene? In this position, you're bitten by an infected. Your wife, husband, lover, partner, mom, dad, brother, sister, the people you love, you want to say goodbye to them. Do you do what Eugene did and say, can you just do me this solid? This literally last request. Can you take me back to my family so I can say goodbye to them? Would you request that, or would you just say, it's been a good run. Go ahead and take me out, or give me a gun and I'll take myself out, or whatever the case may be. Let me know in the comments. I would love to. And again, there's no right or wrong answers. So obviously, this is a hypothetical in a fictional world. But let me know. Like I said, you might call me cruel. But I'm in Joel's camp. I'm sorry, Eugene. We live in a world where tough decisions like this have to be made, and I got to make this decision because I am, protecting my family and my loved ones. Again, there's this disposition between Joel and Ellie, and the tension not only is felt in this scene because of the situation they find themselves in, but it's also because of, again, we got to remember, Ellie's like, she has this lingering feeling in her gut that the man that she calls and look at as her father lied to her, and has made a decision that not only compromises her, but also compromises the world, because she could have potentially cured the world. So Joel, fortunately, lies to Ellie. Now, in my mind, is somewhat showing mercy to Eugene and somewhat giving him a more, I don't want to say honorable death, but giving him, showing a sense of trying to soften the punch. He takes him down to this beautiful scene, which I don't know if it was visual effects or if they were on location. Nonetheless, it was beautiful. And it, during our watch party, I said it reminded me of, for my Walking Dead fans, Carol. And I won't say what it is, but nonetheless, if you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about. Look at the flower scene. But Joe does his version of look at the flowers and to look in his beauty, and he leaves Eugene with these words of encouragement where if you love someone, you always see them, even in death.
If you love someone, you can always see their face.
Understands the situation that Joel isn't going to take him back to Jackson. He sees his wife, and we don't hear the gunshot. Again, it's the little things, right? The subtlety. We don't hear the gunshot, but you see the birds flying off the trees, and you understand the sound of the shot. That moment again that I talk about, that moment of like going to adolescence to being an adult and questioning the people you call mom, dad, or your loved ones, or your protector, your guardian. It's where you see them for who they are, the highs and the lows, the good and the bad. And Ellie starts compounded. It's added on, right? This is just adding to the resentment, the anger, the frustration, the lie that he told her all these years ago. And you see it even with my flaws these last few weeks, and I have been standing by this. None of my issues with the show has been an acting issue, hasn't been a performance issue. Bella, as I've said, and I'll continue to say, is a phenomenal actor. They're great. It's never been an Ellie, never been a Bella Ramsey problem. It's been a writing problem. But this scene right here, the look on Ellie's face, and even Joel in the background, he understands what's going on. He understands. He can feel it's tangible. It's right there. It's present. And this is also, you got to remember, going back to the whole dad making my daughter happy. He's letting her down. Heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, man. But speaking of heartbreak, they take Eugene back, and Gail sees Tommy's there. Joel tells her a lie. And that lie consists of, we found him, he was bitten. All true. We realized the situation at hand. But he died peacefully. He died on his own terms. He told me to tell you that he loved you. And, Gail's very appreciative of all this. She's obviously sad, but she understands the graphic situation. But then Ellie, and I get it.
That's not what happened.
It goes all the way back to that lie that Joel told her 5 years ago when they were on that mountain. The same look, the same tone, the same body language of what he displayed to her about what happened in Salt Lake City at the hospital is happening all over again. And it goes back to the conversation of a kid who won't, address their parent lying to them, even though they know they're lying, versus when you're an adult. You've built up this courage, you've built up this sense of adulthood where you can confront your parent. And she calls him out. Timing might have been off because Gail's obviously grieving, and this is tough for her to hear, but it's the truth. And that's something that Ellie wasn't given, was the truth. And I think in a way, this is Ellie's telling Gail the truth, even though it's painful. But again, the importance of the scene is Ellie realizes that the same thing he did to me 5 years ago, or I guess 6 years at this point, no, 5, is the same thing all over again. It triggered her. It triggered her when he said that lie. He told the lie. It's the same thing he did all those years ago. And she couldn't allow it to go through, or couldn't allow him to do the same thing. Big moment. Huge moment, because as we find out, we get another 9 months later. We now understand what the beef was, why they haven't been talking for almost a year. As we wrap up, we rehash all the scenes that we saw from episode 1 at the New Year's Eve party. We now have so much more context of why Joel did what he did to Seth, and why Ellie came at Joel the way she did, because of all the stuff that we obviously witnessed for the last hour with this episode. We ended that. We didn't see what happened when Ellie walked by Joel on the porch, but we see that now. She, again, is at a point where she feels confident enough to address him about the situation in Salt Lake. And she does it. She flat out says, I'm done with you if you don't tell me the truth. And Joel he's kind of taken back from this, but he knows that this is the time and the place. And even if he's not ready, that it has to happen now, because she says, I'll give you a second chance. And, the scene is beautiful. She asks him, were there other survivors, other immune? No. Did you take out, the people in the hospital and all? Yes. My only issue, I don't say issue, but I guess my only question was, she says, was there, if they would have done what they did, was there a cure? If they would have killed me, would they have been able to conjure up a cure? And he flat out says yes. To me, I felt like that was kind of like a, I don't know. They would have maybe found a cure, but there was no guarantee. But again, that's a little small nitpick. The idea is, like, regardless of what I just said, Joel didn't even give them the opportunity to come up with the cure, because he obviously took that away from them, took that away from Ellie. And this goes all the way back to her burning herself with the pot, the tattoo, the feeling of like loneliness, depression, feeling lost, feeling like you don't have a purpose. In her mind, this was her purpose, to save the world. The cold opening and the stuff we saw throughout this episode gave us more context of why Joel did what he did. I think we all kind of knew that he loved Ellie, cared for Ellie. This is kind of a second chance to raise a daughter after losing Sarah. We kind of knew that, but now having this extra context of like how he was raised, how he doesn't want to be his father, how he's willing to hurt himself before to protect Tommy at a young age and carry that on through adulthood. So we understand why Joel did what he did, and we can understand why Ellie feels the way that she did, because that is a choice that was taken away from her and wasn't given to her. Both emotional state of mind. The truth has been revealed, but sweet moment. Ellie looks at Joel and says, I can never forgive you, but I'll try. These last few weeks has been tough, because I feel like obviously the end on that moment, it's an end on Ellie's face here in the rain. She's made it. I do question how we ended up here, because last time we saw Ellie was with Nora, beating her with a pipe in a hospital full of wolves. I don't know if we'll rehash that scene, how she was able to escape, and to see her. I'm assuming she killed Nora. I'm assuming we're going to get that context. She's back at the hotel, and we see this look on her face. And we got to remember that this look on her face is following us up, catching us up to all that backstory to boom. This is the Ellie that we see in front of us. And again, not to sound like a broken record, but the Ellie that we see now is not the Ellie that I think we've been building up to. It's feel like this is the Ellie that we've gotten for in real time, the last 5 minutes of this show. From the back half of episode 5 into the final 10 seconds of episode 6. She didn't get that second chance with Joel to make up for what he did and to have this life of understanding the sacrifice a parent will make, to do anything that they can in their power to protect their loved one, even at the expense of the world. Obviously, big stakes. I am hoping, wrapping this up, next week we got the trailer, some action beats. Looks like there might be some, like what I'm questioning, are they going to show how she escaped the hospital, yada yada yada. I think we're going to get some of that based on the trailer. The trailer ends with a shot. Couldn't tell who it was in the rain, but I would assume it was Abby that Ellie's like holding a gun to. I don't want to make this too long, but again, this is another issue. The lack of Abby in the last 3 episodes feels kind of odd. And it almost makes me wonder, and it kind of I said this a couple weeks ago, it makes me scared to think that next season, 2028, whenever we get the next season, that most of the season is going to be like, because I know the game is like, there's a point in the game where you are playing as Abby. You get her whole like the show has given us, context and the backstory, but we haven't, seen much of her since episode 2. I would assume she's going to show up next week. Maybe a confrontation between Abby and Ellie. Then I'm scared to think that, and not scared from the sense like Caitlin Devers, as I've said before, phenomenal actress. of course I would watch anything that she's in, because even though I hate Ellie or Abby because of what she did, but she's a great actor. But I'm like, and again, I'm just assuming, or I'm just making a, I'm just speaking out loud, spitballing. But are they going to spend next season like all Abby, like just from her perspective, what she's been up to, so on and so forth? But we'll see. That's next year or 2 years to worry about. But I hope next week. I don't want to say what is the conclusion for this season, I guess, because we know Abby and Ellie are, there's another season. We know they're not going to kill one another next week. So I'm trying to think in my head, like, what's the obviously we're going to probably end on a cliffhanger, I would imagine. I don't say obviously, I would imagine we're going to end on a cliffhanger, but I'm just trying to think in my head, what is the bow on this season? Like the little, like, okay, we end here. This is the thematic story we try to tell in season 2. Like, what is that thematic ending for next week? Guess we'll find out. This will end the breakdown portion of tonight's discussion. If you've watched this whole breakdown, I appreciate you. Like, share, comment, consider subscribing. This will be available in podcast form on Spotify and Apple. So follow me on those platforms. I would appreciate it. And I will see you all next week. I hope you can join the watch party and the live after show next week. But again, thank you for watching this breakdown, and I'll catch you on the next video.